Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrofil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Welcome everyone to Haya Sister Special Talks. And of course, welcome Chaplain Sondos Kholaki. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Today, as we know, inshallah, we are going to have around 1 hour talking and learning more about achieving peace and resilience through Dhikr. So before we start, sisters, please make sure you're ready with your heart and mind and body as well. We are here in this beautiful weekend on Saturday night for Sister Sondos and also Sunday morning for all of us with the sole purpose of learning and attaining the ridha of Allah. So let's prepare one more time our body, heart, and soul. And other than that, please also be ready with your note-taking tools, because inshallah we are going to learn many important things this morning. Right, so I think we can start. Assalamualaikum, Sister Sondos, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for having me.
So what time is it, Sister, there?
It is 8:15 p.m. on Saturday night over here. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. All right, so let's start this, Sister Sondos. Would you please explain a little bit on chaplaincy, especially what you do and how is it there in the US?
Sure. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Again, thank you all for coming on a Sunday morning when you could be doing something else. Really speaks to where your heart is, mashallah, to come here. And we can learn together. So thank you so much for this question, actually. I think with the title Chaplain Sondos, some people may not be as familiar with it as it is here in the US. And in fact, in the past 5 years, one of my main goals has been to educate the Muslim community about this profession of chaplaincy. So a chaplain is essentially a professional who provides spiritual and emotional support to individuals who are experiencing some sort of crisis at any level. And the way that I'd like to explain it to Muslims especially, and I think this one might be a little bit more resonant, is if we think of the story of revelation for the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. When he received revelation, he was sitting by himself in a cave, and out of nowhere, right, Angel Jibreel alayhi salam shows up and commands him to read, to recite. And we know the story of the Prophet ﷺ, who says, I cannot, and he squeezes him and he tells him 3 more times, right, to read. And we can imagine what the Prophet ﷺ could have been feeling in that moment of revelation. Scared, confused, worried, concerned. Even there are some reports saying wondering about his own sanity. Like, did I really experience and see what I thought I experienced and saw? And so he comes running down and he comes to his wife, Khadija, radiallahu anha, who I talk about as the first chaplain in our Muslim community. Because if we think about what she does, radiallahu anha, she does a few things. She takes the cloak, right, the dithar, and she covers him. And what's interesting is the word chaplain in Latin, it comes from this root word in Latin that means cloak, because it comes from a cloak that chaplains used to wear, or the first chaplain used to wear. I think the word is like kappa or something like that. So she comes and she covers him with the cloak. And if you think of the symbolism of cloak, right, it's something that's warmth, that's protection, that's covering, that's secure. All of these qualities you can think of, inshallah, is something that a chaplain aims to provide for somebody who's feeling worried or upset or scared, or not sure what's going on. And then she reminds him of his beautiful qualities. And she says, Ya Rasulullah, I'm referring to him as that, alayhi salatu wasalam. you are an honest person, you are a good person, you take care of the needy, you are there for people. She's reminding him of all of the reasons why something like this is happening to him, but also what he has in terms of his qualities to overcome this challenge. And then she makes a referral and she says, let's go visit my cousin Waraqa, and he has some more knowledge in this. I don't have a lot. I don't know what's going on. So she was okay with not knowing a solution and not being able to fix it, right? So I bring this story hopefully to help you all understand what it is that we chaplains do. Here in the US, we're employed at secular institutions mostly. So like college campuses, the hospital, prison, military, places where otherwise you wouldn't find like a masjid, you wouldn't find an imam, you wouldn't find a sheikh, you wouldn't find a therapist per se, but you need some sort of connection to your religion or religious community. That's the chaplain's job. So here in the US, we undergo 3 years of training for our Master of Divinity in Chaplaincy. And then we have several thousand hours of clinical training at a hospital with a supervisor and an interfaith group. So the last thing I will say about this is, like, if you think about, many people ask, well, what's the difference between a chaplain and like an imam, or a chaplain and a therapist? A chaplain does not have expertise to the level in theology and fiqh, to the level of a mufti or a sheikh, right? We have some basic knowledge. And then on the other side of it, a chaplain is not a licensed therapist. We are not a licensed counselor. We don't have the specialized expertise and training in psychology as much as a therapist would, but we have some, and we have a basic understanding. So we're kind of in the middle of both. And we partner with both therapist and counselor, and we partner with the sheikh and the imam in order to bring holistic care to an individual.
Right, mashallah. Such a great opening. It's very touching because you started with our mother Khadijah radiallahu anha and also Rasulullah sallallahu, and this also gives us a little bit of the importance of being a chaplain itself, that you don't only touch on the heart, but also you need to do something with the body as well. And here we are going to focus on how do you do it as a Muslim chaplain, and with the tools that we already have it in our religion with dhikr and all of the prescribed rituals. So I think the first would be another opening probably for your introduction on how dhikr has been guiding you, or how you utilize it in your daily, I would say khidmah, not work, but khidmah to others.
Alhamdulillah. Dhikr is my anchor. Dhikr is my anchor in this profession. A lot of people, when they learn about what I do in the hospital, I'm primarily in the hospital and I do some police chaplaincy here as well. How do you self-care? How do you go home and detach after seeing all of these cases? How can you be around death all the time and, not feel like you're completely crumbling? Wallahi, dhikr is my anchor in the beginning of the day and the end of the day. These are my two worship practices that I feel naked without. I even remember a day, subhanAllah, I got caught up in the morning and I completely forgot my wird. Usually I do my morning wird and dua. And I felt like something was off all day when I was at work. I'm just like, what is wrong with me? And I started going back and trying to do some muraqabah and think like, okay, did I sleep? Is something going on? Am I not feeling well? And then it suddenly hit me, oh my God, I forgot to do my wird. My wird is like my spiritual fortress. It's like an energy shield around me. We can talk more about what that is and how that comes through. But it really, dhikr, what I love about this practice, aside from all of the kind of physical, somatic, scientific benefits that I've discovered actually through chaplaincy. So before chaplaincy and before my education and training, I knew that dhikr was like a good practice to have. And I knew like the benefits of it in theory, right? Reading it, hearing it in lectures and whatnot. But it was only until I started connecting the healing practices that I was reading in all of my master's reading and all of my education in like more Christian or secular institutions. So we do a lot of training in healing, especially from trauma, that I started to read some things and think to myself, we have that. We're doing that in Salah. We're doing exactly this in Dhikr. A lot of the research that's coming out in the science is centered more, perhaps they like frame it in more Buddhist practices, like things that are not like a theistic religion, right? Maybe it's more open to everyone, but affirmations, affirmations and the beads and all of these somatic practices and whatnot directly have an impact on those who have gone through trauma. Sorry, our protector, as somebody comes in through the house. So what was I saying? So when I started to read more and learn more about the actual properties of dhikr and the benefits of it, especially those who have gone through trauma, that's when I've realized I put the two and two together. And I was like, subhanAllah, our religion really does offer the entire package. Like when Allah says, I have perfected for you your religion, and it is a complete package, it is the complete package. In every practice that, and I love the word that you use, prescribed, that Allah has prescribed for us, it is medicinal for us. And we'll talk more, inshallah, about how that comes up.
All right. Thank you very much, sister. My next question would be that, well, it's up to you. You can start from that to continue what you said just now, or about this. Maybe we know that there is an ayah in the Quran in ayah 28, that with remembering Allah, only with that our heart will find it ease. But I sometimes got a question about how can we even attain the peace and also the satisfaction if we don't even remember, or we don't even know who Allah is. Even if you remember him, then how could we even attain the peace? So maybe can you explain to us maybe the step, or what should we prepare at first before making a dhikr as our routine or something?
Sure. So, ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. Verily, in the remembrance of Allah and the dhikr, do our hearts find peace and rest. And it goes back to so many things, subhanAllah. But what I think about is like right now, our group, we are in a state of dhikr, because what are we doing? We're remembering Allah, right? Who is our company right now? We have all of us here, but who else? Unseen company, the angels that come down, who are looking constantly and searching and seeking for people who are doing dhikr, who are doing any kind of remembrance of Allah Ta'ala. When you have angels in your company, and they're stacked from the highest of the heavens, ceiling, like to the ceiling, right, on top of one another, what do you think that does to the surroundings around you? What kind of state and flavor does that bring to the environment that are around you, right? That protection, again, that security, who is in our company. Another thing that we want to think about is like, when we think of death, when a death happens to somebody, what are the first words that are typically out of our mouth? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. That is a dhikr. So dhikr comes from the word remembrance. It means remembrance. And if we link it back to the word for human, right, which is insan, the derivative of that is nasiya, is forgetfulness, to forget. So a dhikr is literally taking us out of our autopilot, out of our ghafla, out of our distraction, out of our forgetful nature, and bringing us back and aligning us to our purpose in life, which is what? To worship Allah Ta'ala. And part of worshiping him is remembering him. And part of remembering him is getting to know him, exactly what you said. How do you get to know someone other than by spending as much time with them as you can? And when you're in dhikr, or when you're doing dhikr, that's what you're trying to do. You're focusing your mind on Allah no matter what. When the test time comes, when death comes, for example, when a loss comes, we say inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un as a training for us. When the test comes, we think of Allah Ta'ala. Like I said before, this is like our anchor. This is our fortress. it brings an instant calming feeling to our mind and our heart. Going back to the ayah, it puts peace in our heart because it reminds us that we don't have to be in control, that there is a creator, there is a sustainer, there is a provider, there is a guardian that calls himself Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the all compassionate, the all merciful, and he is the one in charge. He's the one who's looking out for me. He is the one that promises that he has my back. He is the one who promises that when I reach out to him or call out to him, that he will answer, that he is listening. So no matter what we are going through, that in and of itself should be a peace in our heart to say, we're not alone in doing whatever it is that we want to do. And I have a dear friend of mine who is also a chaplain. I love something that she says in a dua. She says, Ya Allah, she was going through a very difficult time. She said, Ya Allah, I know that the road is long and I know that the road is going to be difficult, but with you as my companion, I'm ready. That's all we need is dhikr in our hand, in our back pocket, right? So to speak. So when we make it a habit to do dhikr every day, if we want to do just in the morning or just in the evening or do like the both bookends of the day, inshallah, we will feel more connected to Allah. And it's a training, right? It's a practice. The more you practice the dhikr, the more that you want to do it. And the other thing that I will say about this idea of dhikr is that I love the flexibility of it. So we don't really have to prepare much in order to be in dhikr. You don't necessarily have to be in a state of wudu, although it's really nice to. You don't have to be facing the qibla, although it's really nice to. You don't have to be, fully covered, although it's nice to, all of these things. You don't have to be in a certain location or place in order to be doing it. You can be in a room full of people and they're all talking and you could be making dhikr to yourself silently and no one would ever know. So there's an ayah that says, الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم, that there are those who remember Allah in all states, right? Standing, sitting, and lying down. So to me, that dhikr portion, it speaks to the flexibility of it. You can do it standing, you can do it sitting, you can do it lying down when you're on the couch or in your bed or whatever it is. Even if you don't have a sibha, you just use your fingers, or you just start saying a dhikr, or you're just remembering or contemplating. It's so flexible, it's so open. And if we think about those positions symbolically, right, it tells us, I feel like Allah Ta'ala is also sending us a beautiful metaphorical message in this ayah, where he's saying, when you're standing, you feel like you are at maybe your best, right? Nothing's really weighing you down. You're straight, you're tall, you're feeling confident, whatever it is. You're doing dhikr because you're in a good state. You're getting blessings, everything is going well, etc., etc. Maybe there'll be a time in your life where you're sitting, right? Your posture is a little bit more curled over, you're more bent. Something is weighing you down. It's bringing you down a little bit closer to the ground, to gravity. Dhikr is still there. And then there are some times where you feel like you're lying down, like you can't even pull your head up. Like the gravity of this dunya, the heaviness of this dunya is too much to bear. You can't even get out of bed. You can still make dhikr, subhanAllah. So like the accessibility of it, and in that way connecting to Allah, I feel like is for everybody, in all times, in all states, in all cases.
MashaAllah. I've never thought of the ayah like that. Thank you very much for shedding the light for us. And now I think, inshallah, we already have a solid answer as to why question, and also the question to how has been touched upon by you a little bit. And now maybe we can talk more about that, like the how. You've mentioned before the prescribed way to do dhikr, and also you've mentioned about wirid, which maybe not all of us know about that, and how, like, which wirid do you do? Do you have to meet a certain teacher and so on and so forth? Maybe you can explain more about how question.
How, yeah. I have a wird that is specifically given to me from my sheikh, that it comes from a lineage of our spiritual ancestors and has like been proven by these spiritual teachers and giants as a prescription, right? And if you want to think about dhikr in two ways, I like to think of it in two ways. You can have your habitual dhikr, which is just like, every day it's just your habit. You're doing it maybe in the morning every single day. And then whatever wird so let me complete that thought. So I have a specific dhikr that comes in, but we have a lot of different hadiths from the Prophet ﷺ where he gives us a lot of adhkar that we could do, and each one is kind of connected to a different state, right? So like the salawat, to say Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad as a dhikr is something that will relieve us of worry and of anxiety. So if any of us have some anxiousness, anxiety, salawat is a really wonderful one. And expiation of sins. Istighfar, when you're feeling like you need to empty, you're feeling a little bit heavy, a little bit blah. I go to is istighfar. Hamd is just like, even when things are going great, you don't need to ask anything. Hamd is a wonderful one. There are a lot of other hadith that attribute wonderful rewards to different adhkar that you can do. So pick the ones that you feel most resonant. And I also encourage, if there's a certain state that you're in, to find a dhikr that aligns with that. So, we can walk through that a little bit as well. But going back to this two-pronged approach, have a dhikr or a wird that you're doing on a daily basis, no matter what. Do not give it up, and make it at a time where you will always remember. That's kind of ironic. Remember to do your dhikr, which is an actual remembrance. But for example, if you go on a walk every morning, or if you're driving in the car and you're always going to work and you're taking the same route at the same day, put a masbaha in your car where you can see it. Put a masbaha or a sibha next to your bedstand, so you see it right when you wake up. Put one in the pocket of your jacket. So when you stick your hand in your pocket, it's just like, oh, dhikr, right? I put masbahas wherever you can to kind of remind yourself to do this practice. So that's one. The second type of dhikr that I like to describe is something that is intervention. So when something comes up in your day that is a little bit jarring, like you feel a little bit unsafe, or you feel like you just had an interaction that was a little bit different for you, or you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling nervous. So for me, for example, before I give a talk, I like to do dua Musa as my dhikr. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. I take my sibha and I do that as many times. Sometimes I do the whole 100 before I do a talk. And the dua, it serves two purposes. And we'll talk about this in kind of the healing properties. But the repetitive motion of the sibha as I'm clicking through the beats helps me kind of expel some of that anxious energy and that nervous energy that I have and put it towards something. And also the dua itself, the words reassure me that Allah is going to, inshallah, give me all the qualities that I need. And that, again, He's in control. I'm not on my own. It's a reminder for myself. He's with me. He's giving me everything I need. I don't have to worry about it. And also, I know by the end of it that I've made this dua, and inshallah, I've done it with enough times that hopefully one of them comes out with so much sincerity and so much presence out of the 99 or 100 that I've done, that will carry me through my talk. So there's also a sweetness or a wisdom in the number of adhkar that we do. And again, you could ask your sheikh, or you can ask a teacher. There are like interventions that they'll give for certain things that are quite kind of like prescriptions with specific numbers. But what I love that one teacher said about the numbers is that we say it so many times that perhaps, again, out of the thousands of times that we say it, there will be one that will show up for us as our witness on the Day of Judgment, inshallah.
Inshallah, thank you very much. Yeah, sometimes we, even for some people, maybe the how do you say, the beats is not something that they like, because maybe this is a form of invention in the religion, or maybe also the numbers. Why should we do hundreds of thousands of it? But I hope this can be one of the reasons that even one with one presence, good quality, it is actually enough for Allah, and that Allah can see it as our struggle to achieve the ridha of Him, of His. Okay, and now maybe we can start on talking about how to utilize, or how dhikr can help us through difficult times, especially in anything, in the work, family, and in the uncomfortable times, so that we can always be connected to Allah, and hopefully we can go through it in a way that feels comfortable for us, but also something with a way that Allah really accepts us.
Ya Rab, inshallah, Ameen. I began my wird a few years ago when I was actually going through one of the most difficult challenges up until now for myself. And every morning that I would be doing my dhikr, it came time to do dhikr, I would just cry and cry and cry and cry. And it became to be like a space every single day that was safe, that I felt I was surrounded again with the best of company, Allah Ta'ala and His angels. And I could just pour everything out. And the dhikr became that much more important, elevated, especially when you do like Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Like Allah is the best of protectors, providers. Like I only need Allah. Every word of that in the dhikr became so much more pronounced because it really hit my heart. If anything, a consistent dhikr practice will create a space for us to be able to break down if we need to, kind of like salah. But repeating the words over and over and over again is like a balm, is like a medicine for our heart, because we are reminding ourselves again who is in control, who is providing, who is there with us, who is there listening. And I remember, so I mentioned that I work as a chaplain in the hospital. A few weeks ago, I was called to the room of a patient who had given birth to a stillborn. And I'm sorry to bring such a heavy topic to the group. And inshallah, I pray that Allah, if any sisters have gone through something similar, that Allah Ta'ala grants you strength and peace of mind and heart, and a deep understanding of the wisdom, inshallah. But this sister was obviously very deep in grief. And I met with her in the hospital room, and her husband was at bedside. What struck me about this sister, subhanAllah, is that she was grieving very deeply, crying and crying and crying. And the way that she would bring herself back to kind of calm and not let the grief or the crying take her out of, kind of be out of control a bit, is she would use dhikr. So as she was talking to me, kind of processing what she was going through, and the crying would increase, increase, and increase, she would suddenly stop and just breathe and just say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, like almost as if she wasn't quite believing it. Because when you're struck by something and you're so sad for that loss, you're not really grateful for it per se in the moment, but it was a reminder for her. This is where I want to be, in a state of gratitude and servitude and surrender to Allah Ta'ala's qadr. And I don't understand why it's happening, but this is where I want to be, and here's where I am. And so I'm going to keep reminding myself so that my thoughts don't go in a place that's going to be dark and is going to bring me down with them. So she would pause, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, with tears like streaming down her face, Alhamdulillah, and she would say it kind of like go in her own space. Maybe she would say it for several minutes until she calmed down, and then she could talk again. At another point in our conversation, her husband, I noticed they had used like a tablet, and she just had Quran. And when it became too overwhelming to think about or talk about what just happened to her, she would just take the Quran, stop mid-sentence, and just start reading from any page. Tears again streaming down her face. So in this way, we can see that she's utilizing tools for coping through her religious practices of dhikr and Quran. This is how she was dealing with her incredible loss that has no words to describe the feeling of a mother losing her child. You know what I mean? So in that way, we can see these practices as worship, and they are first and foremost worship of Allah Ta'ala and to get to know Him intimately. And they also serve a deeper purpose in those times where we need to be reminded of our ubudiyya, of our servitude, of our humble place, of the fact that we are, as Muslimin, right, as Muslims, we are supposed to surrender to the will of Allah, no matter what shape or form that takes. This is a practice that we have, subhanAllah, and I like to think of it, I call it spiritual muscle memory. So we do the dhikr as a practice when we're fine, when everything's going great, even if you're distracted, even if you don't really feel like it, even if you're really busy and you're doing a million other things, do your dhikr. Because when the hardship comes, not if, when the hardship and the tests come, you fall straight into the dhikr. It's almost like your tongue just automatically remembers because you've been doing it so much, you don't even have to think about it. It's muscle memory, spiritual muscle memory, inshallah.
Right, thank you very much once again. And just now I learned that it is also very important to, when we do dhikr, not only be present with our heart, but also pronouncing it with our mouth and also maybe with our hands really helps us, because maybe sometimes our heart is just not there and our body will not follow our heart. So with the muscle memory that you mentioned will really help us to stay in that condition when it's so hard to do that. And maybe the next one is, how would you say we can increase the quality or level up the things that we've already been doing, especially with what is wajib, like salah and other things that we've been doing for this long, and to increase the quality so that hopefully it will benefit us more and Allah will also be more happier about what we do.
About the distraction piece, I found in one of Ibn Ata'illah Iskandari's wisdoms, his aphorisms, there's a beautiful saying, and I don't have it memorized, forgive me completely, but the paraphrasing of it is, do dhikr even in your heedless state. In other words, even in your distracted state, because it is better for us to be distracted in dhikr than to be distracted outside of the dhikr. So we're going to be distracted, right? We have a million things in our mind. We're humans, nasiya, insan. But better that we're distracted in the practice of dhikr than just be distracted. And inshallah, we'll get the reward, as you said, for our striving and our struggling and our efforts in trying to establish this practice. What has also helped me a lot is something that I alluded to, is understanding what it is that we're saying. What I'll do is, a lot of times when I'm doing the dhikr, I'll be reading the dhikr and reading the English specifically. So as I'm saying the Arabic, I'm reading the English. So I am understanding exactly what it is that I'm affirming. That has helped a lot. And the third thing that I would suggest is for us to begin to understand, again, kind of the healing properties of this practice, to really bring this together, to understand what a gift the practices that we have are in Islam and how people are so thirsty for this. Okay. There's a story that I've posted about before on my Instagram, where I was wearing, it was, I think it was the month of Rajab, one of the months where I was trying to do more dhikr, right, around my work, my hospital. So I wrapped a sibha around my wrist and I was just walking around the hospital with it. And a nurse who, I see often, saw the sibha wrapped around, and he said, "Oh, what's that?" And I said, "Oh, these are my prayer beads. It's a special time in my tradition. I'm trying to remember to do more prayer throughout the day." And he kind of looked at them and he said, "Oh, I wonder if it would be sacrilegious for somebody like me to have that." In essence, asking, like, could I do it too? And so I took the sibha off and I handed it to him and I said, "Please, take it as a gift. Of course you can have them." And he started to tear up and he started to get emotional. And he was just so overwhelmed. And he said, "Okay, how do I use this?" And I said, "Well, what do you want to pray for?" And he thought for a second. Clearly something was happening in his life, right, his personal life. And he said, "I want peace and I need guidance." And I said, okay, so I taught him to say Ya Salam and Ya Hadi, the names of Allah Ta'ala. And I just said, say these as much as you can and use the beads for it. Like, we shouldn't be shy about what we have in our tradition of healing. People are looking for that connection because it is our fitrah to want to be connected to something higher and bigger and better than all of us, right? If there's a few minutes, I must have skipped over this at some point, but I would love to share a slide that details a little bit more about the benefits of dhikr from kind of the research and the science point of view, which is stuff that I was learning in my chaplaincy. Would it be okay for me to share my screen?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Can you do it?
I think so. I think this is. Can you all see that? Okay, so the benefits of dhikr, there are a few things that obviously we are not calling it dhikr in scientific research, but they call it a mantra or an affirmation or repetition, repetitive affirmations. What it does is it helps us to regulate our breathing. So as we're doing the dhikr, there has to be regulation and consistency in the way that we're formulating the words that automatically regulates how we're breathing. So if it's like short and shallow and rapid, if we're nervous or scared, it'll like kind of even it out for us, right? It'll give us a sense of calm. It's another beautiful meaning or translation of the ayah. Literally, you're bringing peace and like steadiness to your heartbeat. It synchronizes the left and right sides of the brain, and in that promotes relaxing brain waves. It improves concentration and focus because you focus just on one task and kind of the world around you disappears just for a few moments. It reduces stress in this way. It gives a greater sense of calm and an increased sense of self-awareness as well. So when they say like meditation, for example, when you're sitting and meditating, you're repeating maybe Om or an affirmation or something that they have repeating. Think of all the benefits that right now science is kind of upholding. It's like meditation. We can apply that most directly to dhikr. The word for, and what you mentioned before about the difference between using, like, for example, the sibha or to use our fingers, both have benefits. So the word bead actually comes from this word bidin in Anglo-Saxon language, which means to pray. Like a bead comes from the word prayer. It's a somatic therapy, as I mentioned before. The repetition of the beads and the clicking and something is something that is helping us expel some of that energy that we might have. The repetition of word and movement both reduce stress, anxiety, depression, and anger, and it helps with our brain cognition performance. Now, what's really interesting is this idea of tapping the finger. So there's this video that I'll show, and it's a very short clip, but this is not a Muslim woman. They're not talking about dhikr. She's not talking about dhikr, but rather teaching how to give people tools to reduce their stress and their anxiety. And so I want us all to kind of watch what she's doing and see the connections between it.
Now I'm going to teach you a much shorter version of happy tapping. Finger tapping is much simpler and much more discreet. You can use it in the moment when something is happening to make you feel anxious, worried or angry, just before this thing happens or just after. You simply bring your fingers into a fist and put your thumbs up. Then you tap your thumb gently on the side of each of your fingers. Remember to get onto the side of your fingertips. If the feeling is quite strong, you might tap around your fingers 3 or 4 times. If the feeling is very strong and you're feeling really angry, worried, anxious or upset, you would tap around as many times as it takes for you to feel calm. You don't have to speak when you're finger tapping, you just tap whenever you feel uncomfortable. For example, I had an important meeting last week and felt really nervous and stressed before I went into the meeting. I tapped on my fingers for a couple of minutes and breathed really slowly, which made me feel much better. Shall we do it once more, just to make sure you've got it?
And I watch what they put here. You can say these things. I'm letting this go. All is well. These are affirmations that you're repeating. I'm feeling calmer, right?
Finger tapping can help you refocus on your breathing too.
That's a whole other thing with the breathing. But we can begin to see, subhanAllah, how this has been secularized, but also teaching people tools literally in the moment when something feels overwhelming for you. And these are things that, inshallah, we can avail ourselves of. So to motivate ourselves, to kind of get ourselves out of that ghafla, that distraction when we're in the practice, focusing on what we're saying, and remember realizing the wisdom and the beauty and the benefit that we're reaping. So we make sure that we're reaping all of the benefit, that we're not just doing like a fourth of it or a half of it, and that inshallah it should be beneficial. And we talked a lot about spiritual benefits, but the one thing that I do want to add very quickly in terms of the spiritual benefits, not just making a fortress around us like an energy shield, but I like to think of it like if there's a rock, right, in this picture, and there's one drop of water that comes down on the rock, but over years and years and years and years, what is going to happen to that? There's going to be an indentation where that drop is hitting over and over and over again. So if we want to think about, even if we're doing a little bit of dhikr every day, over the years, over time, if it is a consistent habit, it will make a dent. It will make a difference. We will feel the difference, inshallah. And the last thing that I'll say about this idea of the heart is that there is a hadith of our beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ where he says, for everything there is a polish, and the polish of the heart is dhikr, is remembrance of Allah. So if we think about our heart and how every day it's accumulating dirt and dust and black dots, right, from sins that we do knowingly and unknowingly. Every day it's accumulating. Think of every time you're doing dhikr, it's like you're taking a wipe and you're just shining, you're polishing it, you're rubbing it, you're removing all of that rust, all of that grime, all of that dirt that before could be building up. Every day we're just taking another layer off, preparing it. So also visualizing sometimes these benefits, inshallah, can help us keep up the practice.
Mashallah, I felt goosebumps when I saw the lady in the video moving her hands. It's just like you with your beats, and it's exactly the thing that we do and prescribed. And Rasulullah SAW gave example for us. So I hope it will put more conviction in our heart so that we can follow that and be more how would you say, confident in practicing our religion. I also want to say that especially with the last photo that you show about the rocks, it gives me such an optimism, so that even though we have so much sin, just indescribable sin, when we make mistake to Allah especially, we don't run from Allah but to Allah, and Allah is such a great reminder. Okay, before we go to the Q&A session, I have one more thing for you to ask. Then we've talked about how dhikr can help us personally and how it can help with our life, but how do you think we can do and apply that, especially with your experience as a chaplain, how we can utilize that to help someone else, maybe in a very simple way without all of the credentials that we have? How can we do that for other people?
Just to understand your question, how can we use dhikr as a tool to help somebody else? So this might be a great question to clarify the role of a chaplain. Interestingly, I don't prescribe dhikr, or I don't mention dhikr or remind people of dhikr necessarily, unless I know for sure that that is a practice that they've already been doing. And this might be a little bit different for us, where we're maybe in the presence of teachers or shiu who give us those tools right away. A chaplain approaches it a little bit more from a therapy point of view. And the reason behind that is, while we all want to be at a higher spiritual state and level for ourselves, when crisis happens, sometimes we say and do things that we never imagine ourselves saying or doing, that don't sound like us regularly, like our religious and spiritual selves. And sometimes to introduce things like saying, everything happens for a reason, or Allah will never test you with more that you can bear, or to say Allah only tests those He loves, or ittaqillah, remember Allah, fear Allah, worship Allah. Like these reminders, people, if they're not ready to hear that and they're still in that moment of grief, it could come across actually harmful. And I don't know if you have experienced that with somebody where they've had kind of like a recoiling to say like, what do you like, I don't want to be loved by Allah, maybe, right? I don't want to be tested in this way. Well, I don't feel that He loves me. So we don't really know what the other person is working through. And as a chaplain, we learn in our training to have to wait for the person to be at that state or come to that conclusion themselves. So the lady that I was saying who was, doing the dhikr to remind herself, clearly that was a practice that she was already doing and that she was utilizing for herself. I didn't tell her anything. I just observed. And you'll see like different manifestations of that with different people. So if we want to think of dhikr, dhikr is our personal practice, our personal reminder, our personal tool. And if you want to do it in subtle ways, like, wearing a sabha or, mentioning it something in passing, but not necessarily prescribing it for a person or telling them what to do. And I'll end with this to say, the way I describe the difference between chaplain and maybe imam is in a question. So a patient will ask me, for example, tell me something that will bring me hope. I don't have hope right now. I'm in despair. Tell me something that will remind me of hope. Imam, in their role as teacher and preacher, will give you 7 different ayats, 3 ahadith, and, a dhikr perhaps, that are all on point about hope and will absolutely answer the question. What a chaplain will probably do is say, what has brought you hope in the past? Do you see the slight difference? So I'm not telling you how to hope. I'm sitting with you to explore and hear, well, where do you get your hope from usually in the past? Is it the Quran? Is it hadith? Is it dhikr? Is it a song? Is it watching a plant? Like, I don't know. Every person is so different. And Allah has created each one of us with different temperaments and different mizaj, different inclinations, different spiritual love languages, I like to call them. So there are all these different forms of dhikr. Dhikr is just remembering Allah. There's Quran as dhikr. There's like dhikr as dhikr. There's out in nature as dhikr. There's dua as dhikr, right? Which one do you find hope in? Which one do you find comfort in? What I find comfort in may be different from what you find comfort in. And so that's the reason why we want to start to think about, like, we have our personal practices, but they may not necessarily translate for somebody else. I hope that answered the question. I didn't misunderstand. And my apologies if I misunderstood.
Thank you very much. Yes, it answers the question. All right, now, sisters, is a very exciting time because this is a Q&A session for you. So we will receive, let's see, up to maybe 2 or 3 questions. So for those who have questions, please raise hand. You can click the little button on the bottom. And that you ask, do you prefer to type your question, you can also do that in the chat box. Okay. While waiting for the question, maybe Sister Sondos, what is your current favorite form of dhikr that you maybe can share with us?
What I've been doing, alhamdulillah, the weather here has been really beautiful in Southern California, is I'm trying to promote the 100 dhikr walk. And so what I try to do is while I'm walking outside, I do a walk every morning for about an hour. And I have my sabha in my pocket. And while I'm getting like a physical exercise, I'm also outside in nature. And the dhikr, subhanAllah, as I'm doing my wird and other dua and adhkar, I've noticed that I'm bringing like awareness to the life around me that I otherwise would never have noticed if I was just walking without the dhikr. So it brings to life the animals, the trees, the flowers, the birds. You pick up on all of the surroundings, subhanAllah, around you. And that's no coincidence, because we know that all of creation is in the dhikr of Allah Ta'ala. So I kind of feel like their company. I feel the company of the trees in their dhikr. I feel the company of the birds making their dhikr. So that currently has been a really, really like a peace-giving form of dhikr. Alhamdulillah.
All right. Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, one more time. All right, we have a question already over here. I'll read the question. What should we do when we do the dhikr autopilot? So sometimes maybe it's a good thing at one side because it means you've done it for so long, so that it becomes something autopilot. But maybe we need to really get more from it. So what would be your advice for that?
We want to think about and kind of do a little bit of a pause moment and assess maybe why are you doing it on autopilot? What is blocking you from being fully present in the dhikr? And could be many things, like evaluate your surroundings, evaluate the time of day. Are you tired? Are you hungry? Are you distracted? Is it in the beginning? Is it in the end? Play to your strengths. Are you a morning person? Do it in the morning. Are you a night person? Do it at night. Who's around you at the time? All of these factors can affect kind of our worship space, whether it's salah, whether it's dhikr, whether it's any other form of that. So kind of take a moment and just do a self-assessment and see what are the obstacles that are there for you. And there are practices, I hope I can remember them, my memory is so bad, but there are etiquettes that we have in order to help us achieve like the best state of dhikr, where it's not just dhikr of the tongue, but it moves to dhikr of the heart, and then we just are constantly in a state of dhikr all the time. Where, you know, our body posture is important. So if I remember, scholars will recommend, for example, that you sit on your knees, like the way that the Prophet ﷺ and Jibreel ﷺ were sitting in the Hadith Jibreel when he came knee to knee with him. That you're facing, if you can, the Qibla, that you're in a state of wudu and cleanliness. That one of the things that our teachers recommend also is like thinking about or envisioning your sheikh, if you have a sheikh or a teacher, kind of opposite of you, just as something to focus on, not necessarily the person and the being, but what I understand in the wisdom of that is to know that you have somebody there who's like reminding you, like in the role of a teacher or a reminder, just to say, hey, stay on track, stay on track. If that's way too distracting, or you don't have a teacher or sheikh, or you feel like that's a little bit weird, totally get that. Imagine just like the lafz al-jalala, like the name, the Arabic of Allah, like, you know, in the calligraphy. In other words, find a focal point, something that you can focus on that is not like a worldly item, but something that will remind you literally of Allah, and try to really concentrate on that as you're saying the adhkar. And then, of course, the other things that we recommended, you know, learning the meanings of them, and understanding, maybe even having a visual of like your heart being polished, or the drip drop of the water on the rock. Whatever it is that helps you, but do take that moment and do a self-assessment, inshallah. Hope it helps.
Muhasabah and muraqabah at all times. Thank you.
Yeah.
And next, the question. I have another question here. How to make the environment to train our family, for example, children. Oh, this is also my question actually, for remembrance of Allah through dhikr.
Oh, that's beautiful, mashallah. Our children see everything, for better or for worse. When you are doing dhikr consistently, in the car, at home, whatever it is, you're playing Quran, you're playing Anashid, they will see you do that, and they will grow up knowing that that is a practice that brings my mother joy or my father joy. Make it a joyful experience. And you can always invite them into it, but never force, just leave kind of the invitation open, but know that they're watching. And know that all of that is becoming what they call embedded theology. Theology that you pick up in your childhood that you don't even know that you're learning, but just from watching and witnessing somebody doing it. Another aspect of dhikr that I found really is helpful and is a beautiful practice is, dhikr is a form of musical therapy. If you sing the adhkar, right, in a beautiful way, it will bring sweetness to it. And the music, the melody attracts beauty. People are attracted to beauty. We are all attracted to beautiful things. So when you beautify the dhikr, people necessarily are going to be attracted to it, including children. So to make it something that is a nice lahan, a nice melody, Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah al-azim. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah al-azim. Just doing that over and over, just kind of like, okay, they'll just pick it up and they'll start singing along, right? Another thing that I found was really fun is when I was in Konya in Turkey, they sell these really long sibhads, like thousands of pieces, but a long one. What they do is a practice in Bosnia that I've seen online is that the women will do like a dhikr circle and they'll sing the adhkar, but they're all using one sibhad, really long sibhad, but it becomes this like bind, like this rope. And it's really cool symbolism there of everyone using it and kind of moving the little beads along together. I found that that's also a fun activity. We don't do that as much, but I remember one Ramadan, I memorized a melody to dhikr, and of course I can't remember it now, but that was so beautiful, alhamdulillah, and I had like recorded it. And that's what we did after Isha and between Taraweeh with my kids. No lecture, no khatira, no reminders, no anything. We just sat and did dhikr. It was like I saw the difference in my own kids in their reception to that, subhanAllah. Remember, dhikr in and of itself is a remembrance. We don't need to use all of these extra words. It will do the effects on the heart and it will do the effects on the body. We don't have to control that, alhamdulillah. And I think it will be felt, inshallah.
All right, mashallah. I hope that answered your question, Sister Shahnaz. And now there are two more here. The first one is, we are approaching Dhul Hijjah. So do you have a special tips for that? And number two is, can we practice now something that we can do together as a form of dhikr? Okay.
So in Dhul Hijjah, there is teaching for us to make dhikr of tahleel, so la ilaha illallah, and takbir, Allahu Akbar, and tahmeed. I believe it's alhamdulillah. And so if we want to do a series of those, would be really good in these upcoming days. And what I've noticed, subhanAllah, in past Dhul Hijjah 10-day time, you will feel different dedicating a day to, let's say, istighfar, than dedicating a day to alhamd. because my go-to usually for dhikr is astaghfirullah al-azim, astaghfirullah al-azim, because I'm just like, oh my God, I'm just like, I just have way too much. I just need to empty, ask for forgiveness, ask for forgiveness. And I didn't realize until I think it was last Dhul Hijjah, where I said, you know what, I'm going to shift and I'm going to do like the last 3 days of the week. Maybe we can do like 3, 3, 3 leading up to Yom Arafah, right? The last 3 days, just hamd. And I felt such a lightness in my being. I was like, wow, I should do alhamdulillah way more. Like the gratitude attitude of it was just so opening. So also to be mindful, like switch up your adhkar so you can get a taste of the different states as well. But yeah, so la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, and alhamdulillah are the best adhkar. And to do a something together, I would love to. What I usually do when I give this talk on dhikr is I have a series of video clips that I show from of dhikr styles from around the world, from a lot of different Muslim countries, and just to show the different melodies, the different types of adhkar, just the different ways of doing it, to also show that dhikr is a really lively and historic, like rooted part of our tradition that we need to revive and resuscitate a little bit alongside everything else that we do. But if we don't want to watch the clips, if we want to actually experience it, which would be lovely, why don't we do the subhanallahi wa bihamdihi? Would that be okay? We can do it with the melody, inshallah. So we'll do
you can unmute your microphone just to experience it together. Okay. Yes.
We might clash in terms of the noise. So does somebody have a really nice voice who would like to lead us in the beautiful melody of the dhikr? Because my voice is not very good. But if we have one person leading it and where the rest of us are on mute, but we're saying it out loud in our own space, you can even turn off your camera, whatever it is that you need to focus on it, right? Any volunteers for a beautiful voice?
I think Sister Ayu is ready.
Alhamdulillah, because I'm not a singer. Okay, bismillah. Maybe we'll do it 33 times. Is that okay?
All right, yes.
Okay, bismillah.
Sister Ayu, are you there? Sorry. Making sure. All right, maybe she's unavailable right now. I think you can just lead us, Mr. Sondos, just like before.
Okay, inshallah. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanallah al-azim. I'm looking up, I don't remember the exact hadith, but this particular dhikr has tremendous rewards, subhanallah. Glory be to Allah and praise Him. Glory be to Allah and all praise is due to Him. Glory be to Allah the Great. So that's what it is. And this basically has tremendous, Allah, the Prophet ﷺ tells us when we recite this that it has tremendous, here it is. So Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, whoever says Subhanallah wa bihamdihi 100 times a day will be forgiven all his sins, even if they were as much as the foam of the sea. Allah. Okay, so with that, kind of putting the benefit, the reward, and understanding what we're saying, let's do it. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanallahi al-azim. 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 Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah 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 al-Azim.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. It's an instant effect. I'm feeling the instant effects of it. Inshallah. Okay, Sister Sondos, the last question here. How do we go back to Allah through dhikr when we got hijacked from our emotion? Especially when it's very challenging to even have a clear mind to do it.
Challenging to do dhikr?
Yes. Challenging to have clear mind.
Have a clear mind. That's hard, subhanAllah. I'll share a hadith where a companion of the Prophet ﷺ asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, I feel so overwhelmed by all of these commandments and practices that are asked of me in Islam. Tell me something that I can just hold on to fast, like strong. And the Prophet ﷺ said, keep your tongue wet with the remembrance. In other words, dhikr. Dhikr is, like I said, one of the most flexible practices that we have and the most attainable. And when everything else feels so overwhelming, think of that as like your lifeline. Of course, we're not forcing it, but what I would say is perhaps use the emotions that you are feeling in order to fuel the dhikr that you want to make. And be gentle with yourself. So again, when you're going through something that is really difficult, that is a hardship, it is not unusual to feel like you just don't have the energy or the capacity to do any sort of worship practice. A lot of people say that. So let's take the flexibility of dhikr and let's widen the scope of it a little bit. Let's say if you feel like you don't have the capacity emotionally, physically, mentally to do the dhikr practice, go outside and find a tree and sit next to the tree and just listen to the tree's dhikr. Listen to the birds' dhikr. Have someone else do the dhikr for you, but you are in the company of it. And inshallah, you will have the same effects. Inshallah, you will feel that peace. if there's a fountain or body of water or something that has that kind of like trickling water effect of it, that's dhikr. So let's expand this idea beyond just finger tapping and the beads and the affirmations that we say, and remember that all of creation is in dhikr. And to like, why do people feel at peace when they're out in nature? Right? There's a connection there, absolutely, most definitely. So inshallah that helps.
Alhamdulillah, thank you very much. So we started with how to habitualize ourselves with the dhikr and the wird, but we now ended with something that's even greater, a reminder that everything around us really does their own form of dhikr, and sometimes we need to just stay there in silence and listening to their dhikr, mashallah. So beautiful. Okay, so I think this is nearing the end of this session. Would you please give a closing remark for all of us?
Just a dua that inshallah Allah Ta'ala gives us the strength and steadfastness and perseverance that we need to maintain a dhikr practice regularly in our lives, that He expands our chests and gives us great spiritual openings and peace of heart and mind through the remembrance of Him, that remembering Him will bring us peace and will give us a feeling of increase of love for Him, and not fear and not trepidation and not worry and anxiousness, but that to remember Allah, inshallah, that He gives us through that remembrance a good opinion of Him and a strong relationship of Him and a love of Him as well. And I pray, inshallah, that Allah Ta'ala helps us to formulate the loftiest of intentions for the upcoming first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, and that He rewards us according to those intentions and not necessarily our efforts, which will always fall short. May He always give us tawfiq and taysir and give us khair in this life and in the next, inshallah. Allahumma ameen.
Ameen, ya Rabbal Alameen, mashallah. Sister, we cannot really say thank you enough to you.
My pleasure, alhamdulillah.
As Sister Mai said before, that you have put your time as another sadaqah for all of us, that we've learned such a, I don't know, I cannot even explain it anymore. I hope, inshallah, as you said just now, that hopefully we can really put into practice what we've learned from you today. And thank you, Jazakallah khairan kathiran.
Hope to meet you all in person someday, sometime,
Yes,
inshallah. But in the meantime, the beautiful community that you have here, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of it, even for a short time. Thank you. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very
Can we
much.
take pictures?
Yes, we need to take a picture.
Okay, sure.
Please turn on your camera.
Yeah.
I will also take picture